Hello friends, Clage back with another Punishing Grey Raven character guide today, and we are going to be talking about our main girl once again back to be the lead of a meta team, Lucia Pyroath. Going to go over all the stuff you would expect: evolutions, equipment, memory builds, team guides, and of course combat and rotation demonstrations. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty information, I'm going to be upfront and real with you all. Lucia is quite complex and can be somewhat overwhelming, so I'm going to be making a point to simplify things as much as I possibly can. Going to gloss over more superfluous things like how her basic attack string works and other things, so we can focus on teaching you how to build the character and how to properly play the character. She has multiple rotations depending on your level of investment and multiple ultimates, so there's a lot to digest here, and I want to make it as easy and simple to understand as possible while giving you all the information you need to determine how much you want to invest and build the character. So let's go right in and start talking about evolutions. As always, S5, pretty straightforward. Got to activate all available QTEs whenever you activate an ult or when you activate her core passive modes. Pretty standard S5. Double S, which is always where you should be shooting for, is a bare minimum to build the character, is quite nice. Going to get extra damage on her airborne attack. She's going to gain extra core passive gauge while she is airborne. And after she casts her full ultimate and leaves the battlefield, she will have after images that will attack the enemies up to 4 times while she is off screen. So again, bare minimum, use this to be your stopping point if you're not intending to invest too much into Lucia, but this is what you should be shooting for at the bare minimum. Double S3 is quite powerful, very good double S3 in my opinion. Damage increase on her sword wave attacks. She is going to get extra signature energy for using her sway attack, which I will go over in the combat demonstration. After she casts ultimate once, her QTE is now going to do 1000% extra damage for the duration of the battle. That is a lot of extra damage on a QTE. This is a very strong double S3. I would put it up there with like Han Ying in terms of changing the character and empowering her. So if you have the extra resources, this is absolutely worth considering. That said, we are in the middle of a double paid S rank patch, so plan accordingly before deciding where you want to go on your level and investment. At triple S, after doing a basic attack when you've used a red orb, so pinging red orb and then doing basic attack, you are going to gain a consumable buff that buffs the damage of your next ultimate. So basically, if you're doing her rotation correctly at triple S, every single ultimate is going to get this buff from the consumable ultimate buff. Her sword waves are also going to build more ultimate gauge, which allows you to ult quicker for her rotation, and she gains extra off-field damage as well. Triple S3, 6, and Triple S Plus are pretty straightforward. Her hold attack and sway attack both get extra damage. Her 3 pings in flare mode will also get extra damage, and at Triple S Plus, she gets extra damage on her ultimate. Again, bare minimum, go for double S on this. 1 copy of the gacha, then you're paying cage shards to get her to double S. Double S3 is absolutely worth considering, but I'll go over priorities once we go through the rest of her equipment. So up next, let's talk memories, the one part of Lucia's kit that is not overly complex and is quite set it and forget it for 99% of situations. Gonna always have her 4-piece signature set, Heraclitus on. Just pretty standard. Every single character uses these. You're never going to take it off. Don't ever consider it. And then the other end, you're going to be using 2-piece Kadi, harmonizing to 4-piece Kadi if you have her harmonized, which I absolutely recommend doing. It helps Lucia out greatly as long as you can afford her 6-star weapon. Speaking of which, on weapons and resonances and such. For memory resonances, on the bottom, you're going to do signature for all of the bottom, no matter what you're doing. For the top, if you are double S3 or above, attack plus 15 is a slight optimization over basic attack. If you are double S or below, I highly recommend just doing basic attack for all 6 up top for your memory resonances. As for her weapons, her 6-star obviously is highly encouraged. It helps smooth out her rotation quite a bit, enables you to use her entire kit as it was intended. It's going to recover some signal orbs, and it'll just basically make things a lot simpler. I'll go over that when we get to the rotations. She is not locked behind her 6-star weapon. There is a 5-star weapon rotation that is actually a lot simpler to do and wrap your head around, and does work. You will just have to swap off Lucia much more often, and you'll be sacrificing a pretty notable amount of damage. But if you absolutely cannot afford a weapon right now, feel free to use the 5-star. I will show a 5-star rotation once we get to the battle demonstration. As for resonances, first and foremost, deadline timing smooths over Lucia's rotation a lot. Highly, highly recommended if you can afford the 6-star weapon. If you can do a resonance, deadline timing will do a lot of work for you here. If you want to go deeper on resonances, Afterglow and Incandescence would be your 2 and 3 options to just boost overall damage. Course. Lastly, let's talk about her cub. Corvus is a pretty strong cub. It both boosts Lucia's damage pretty notably, but it also has a lot of grouping on its active skill. This is quite nice for Lucia because she is a highly mobile character. She is air dashing around the screen a lot, so that grouping to help hit things with sword waves and other non-full screen ultimates is actually quite handy. If you have the extra cub tickets and you can pull a copy, definitely worth considering. One of the stronger cubs we've had of late. Definitely worth the consideration. As for priorities on what you should be doing if you are building Lucia, double S first and foremost. That is absolutely the bare minimum to build the character. Just trust me, you do not want to play this character below double S, I promise. After that, I would recommend the 6-star weapon. Closely behind the 6-star weapon is getting to double S3. That extra damage on the QTE is no joke. It is very nice quality of life, and in general allows her to do a more enhanced rotation that kind of divvies up field time a little bit better and is just way more damage. So the 6-star weapon and double S3 are both very worthwhile investments. Again, if you can only pick one, I would take the weapon, but they're close, is all I'll really say. The cub, after all of that, if you can afford the 6-star weapon and double S3, then I would say the cub comes next, and after that, triple S and beyond. As for should you pull the character, yes, at 100% do not skip Lucia. You will regret it. Not only is she now the key lead of the fire team going forward, she is also the lead of the plasma blade team. So you're not going to want to skip out on Lucia. She is going to be very important for multiple teams in multiple game modes. Don't skip. Trust me. Do not skip. You'll regret it later. As for team builds, let's get in and go over our options there. So the meta team will now be Watanabe on yellow as your tank, Liv Amp on red as your amplifier, and of course Lucia herself. As for memory builds and how to handle things on this front, for Warzone, for Liv, we are going to be using a combination of 4-piece Da Vinci, 2-piece Guinevere, and if you can harmonize, 2-piece Einstein. If you are not harmonized, then you can just do 2-piece Guinevere instead. Or you can do 2-piece Einstein. If you're not harmonized, it's kind of 6 1/2 dozen the other. If you can afford to harmonize Liv, to resonate her memories, highly recommended you get the class skill on the bottom just for that swap out. Lucia is not a soloist, so she is going to be swapping in and off field regularly. And up top, 15 attack is all you really need for Liv. Her other option for when you are doing Pain Cage, Liv is actually going to swap over to a Gloria setup. We're going to do 4-piece Guinevere, 2-piece Gloria, which is a 5-star set. You can get this from the 5-star memory recycling or in other areas like the workshop if needed. And then harmonizing 2-piece Einstein as your harmonization option. Liv does not see the field in Pain Cage. She does not see the field in Warzone unless you are playing Lucia at double S or lower. So, if you need to skimp on resonances for memories, that's fine. If you can afford to resonance, again, class skill on the bottom, up top, doesn't really matter for the Pain Cage setup. So I'm going to swap this back because I will absolutely forget to later if I don't. As for Watanabe, Watanabe is swapping to a more support-oriented setup here. So for his memory set in Warzone, we are going to be doing 4-piece of his signature set, Alphonse, and 4-piece Shakespeare. This is absolutely the best possible setup you can do for Watanabe now going forward as Lucia's tank in Warzone. As for resonances, red orb up top, and class skill is now what you want to do on the bottom. You can still do signature skill if you want. Watanabe still does damage. He is not irrelevant when he is on the field. But I would recommend going to class skill just because that extra shred and extra uptime is much more worthwhile with Lucia pulling most of the weight going forward. As for Pain Cage, Watanabe is going to become a Da Vinci bot. Going to do 4-piece Da Vinci, and then if you are harmonized, what you're going to do is swap off of your harmonization of Alphonse, and we're going to go over to Shakespeare instead. So 4-piece Shakespeare, 4-piece Da Vinci, and now Wata is our good old QTE bot. In Pain Cage, Wata will not see the field, so you don't need to resonate class skill if you don't want to. If you can afford to, it's definitely recommended. Absolutely do not need to hypertune him for the Pain Cage setup, however, so if you need to get some new Da Vincis and put them on, don't worry about spending hypertune materials. Save those for Lucia and Nana Knight here next week would be my recommendation there. So again, going to swap this back. I will absolutely forget later, and then I will feel like a Nimrod. As for weapon resonances on both characters, what you're going to be doing, Wata, if you're doing resonance, obviously, first and foremost, do domain deconstruction, the tank resonance. This is always the #1 priority for your tank for a team. If you have the extra resonance, deadline timing still smooths over stuff for Watanabe quite a bit. That being said, with him being a more support-oriented character now with Lucia carrying the damage, you could swap off of deadline timing and just go for extra damage if you so prefer, if you have the resonances to spare. If you are lacking this team and need budget options, for Watanabe, your budget option is going to be Bridget, who you should have at SS+ if you have played the recent Global Sync patches. She works as a option for your tank needs. If you're going to be using Bridget, make her the Da Vinci bot and then equip Liv with a more combat-oriented set since she will need to see the field. Again, Lucia is not a solo artist. You are going to need to rotate her in and out if you want to use her properly. So in that case, you can swap Liv over to a more damage-oriented set. As for resonances on her, superconducting axial ray is the go-to for an amplifier. If you have the extra resonance is great. If you don't, not the end of the world. It does not change rotation or team output other than a little bit of damage. So there is not a direct replacement for Liv right now. She's free via the vouchers, so if you haven't picked her up, it's definitely recommended. That said, Liv is finally getting a replacement. We do know her replacement is coming later this year. If you absolutely need to save for rolling on Nana Knight here soon, or you just don't have the extra investment to go into a character you know you're going to replace in the next half year, you can swap Liv out for a different amplifier and just deal with the off element while still getting the amplifier buff. If you do that, just take your highest ranked amplifier. If you have one at SS, throw them in, doesn't matter what element they are, and go from there. So those are your team building options. Again, if at all possible, you want the meta team. Watanabe, of course, is very important. He's still going to be relevant for Luna Nihil. He is still going to be relevant as other options, so this is what you want if you can afford it. So that covers pretty much team builds and options there. And now it's time to get to the difficult part. We are going to go in some combat demonstrations. I'm going to teach you all the different rotations available to Lucia and her team, and the differences between Warzone and shorter fights like Pain Cage. So I will be right back. Alright, so before I start going over all the various rotations available to Lucia, and they vary wildly depending on your investment level in the character, I just want to go over her base kit and kind of lay the foundation for how things work and how you go in and out of the various modes Lucia has available. If this feels overwhelming or complex, don't worry about it. It'll make a lot more sense once we start applying it to the rotations. But I feel like it's really important to understand how Lucia's kit works before trying to apply the rotations. Otherwise, you're not going to understand why you're doing X, Y, or Z at various investment levels. So let's just get into her kit and kind of explain how everything works. Now, Lucia's bring-in attack is effectively her red orb. As you can see, she comes in, does a slash, and we have 3 on our stack here. I'll go over what that means in a second, but let's start with the bare bones basics. Lucia has a very similar orb setup to Hanying Solace Tune, where she always has access to all 3 colors of orbs, and then a set of gray orbs above that show you how many actual pings you have available. So, for the purpose of this video, for the fire team and the fire team rotation, you can completely ignore the blue orb. You can just pretend this does not exist. The blue orb will be used in her plasma blade team rotation. I am not going to go over Plasma Blade in this video. This video is already going to be way too bloated and way too long as it is. And the elemental effects teams deserve their own separate guide to explain how they work, because they're very much their own thing. We can't even build the full Plasma Blade team until Nana Knight comes out next week and is available to roll on. So, for the time being, we are completely ignoring the blue orb, and we are completely ignoring the Plasma Blade effects. So just don't worry about that for the time being. Now, as for her other 2 orbs, basically how Lucia works is her orbs followed by basic attacks will help build up her main core passive gauge. That's the big sword gauge down here. We do this by either using the red orb to build the stack number here. This stack maxes out at a total of 9. Does not matter what your investment level is or what evolution you have Lucia at. This only goes to a maximum of 9. It's not like older characters where you can get like double the stacks or anything. If we build up this stack number to a certain amount and then immediately hit a basic attack, it will drain the stacks and use that to fill the core passive gauge. Similarly, her yellow orb will not build this stack number, but it will cause Lucia's next basic attack string to help build the core passive gauge. So, unlike a lot of the characters we've had recently, you will be using basic attacks with Lucia no matter your rank investment, but you'll be using them more at lower investments because you'll need to do that to help build the core passive gauge. But the first step with Lucia is effectively we build up the core passive gauge. That's going to allow us to enter her floating hyper mode. So let's just show you the 2 ways you can do that. So if we spam red orbs to build up the stacks to a maximum of 9 and then hit basic, as you can see, big old chunk of the gauge gets filled up. It will not go from empty to full off a dump of the 9 red orb stacks. However, if you hit basic immediately after bringing Lucia in, that counts as a single red orb ping, which means the gauge will be filled enough that if you spam the red orbs to 9 and then do basic attack, you'll get a full gauge. So I'll show you what that looks like real quick. So the first thing you're going to want to learn is that when you bring Lucia in, you're going to want to immediately hit basic. It does not matter what you're doing or what rotation you're in. This is pretty much universal for the characters. So we bring Lucia in, I immediately hit basic. You see this time the stacks go back down to 0, and we get a chunk of the core passive filled up, right? Now, if I were to spam red orbs and get this up to 9 and then hit basic, we would have a full core passive gauge. Cool, that's one way to do it. The other way to fill up the core passive is by using the yellow orb. So if we do the yellow orb and then launch into her basic attack string, you'll see it will fill the gauge as well. The difference is if you do the full attack string after a yellow orb, even if the core passive gauge is flat out empty, you will get to a full stack here. You will fill up the entire core passive gauge and be ready to go. Her floating hyper mode will now be available to you. So those are the 2 ways you build up her core passive gauge. That's step 1. Next, once we have the floating hyper mode available, how we get into that is we're going to hold down ultimate. Don't tap it. If you tap it, you'll just alternate between her float and ground state. We want to actually hold down ultimate to go into her floating hyper mode. In floating hyper mode, we get new attacks available. If you hold basic, you go into this sword flurry attack, and then if you follow that up by holding basic again at the end of that animation, Lucia will do her sway attack. The sway attack builds a boatload of signature energy, and even more if you're at higher investment. So let me show you what that looks like real quick, and then I'll talk about the options of what to do once we've utilized these new attacks in her floating hyper mode. So, one more time. Let me get this out of the way. So we bring Lucia in, we build a little gauge. I'm going to use the yellow orb just for the most basic version. We build our core passive gauge up all the way. Floating hyper mode is now available. So if we hold ult, hold and release basic, hold and release basic again, that's the sway attack. And now we have two options. We can either go into her fast ultimate or her full ultimate. The fast ultimate is going to be done by holding down ultimate. She'll do this quick animation, and then we're back to our normal mode. And from here, you can ping orbs again and start refilling the core passive gauge to get back to floating hyper mode. Pretty straightforward on what you can do there, right? So that's the fast ultimate. If we want to use her full ultimate, we're going to get into the core passive the same way. But this time, instead of holding down the ultimate, we're going to tap the ultimate button. So bring in basic. We're going to hit the yellow orb, fill up our core passive gauge, hold ultimate. We're in the hyper mode. Hold basic. This time, do the sway. I'm going to tap ultimate. Now we are in sword wave mode. In sword wave mode, you just hold down the basic attack button. She'll spam sword wave similar to Bianca. Once you have ultimate energy, you tap ultimate, and we get our full ultimate animation. Those are Lucia's two ultimate options. You will utilize both of these in different rotations, but I just wanted to explain how we get to both of those options. Those are basically all the options of Lucia's kit. How you're going to go in and out of them and which modes you choose to utilize at different rotation times, again, is going to vary wildly depending on what investment level your Lucia is at. So what I'm going to do is show a bunch of recordings of the various rotations at various investment levels and explain how to go in and out of stuff with the character. All right, so I have made recordings of all the various rotations depending on the level of investment that your Lucia has. So we're going to go from lowest to highest. I'm going to start with the 5-star weapon, no resonances rotation, and we'll build up from there. So important to note, every single rotation is going to start the exact same way regardless of what your investment is. For Warzone, what's going to happen, you're always going to bring in Watanabe to do a single ult rotation. So Watanabe comes in, does a 3-ping, enters ult mode, spams his blaze orbs, does his ultimate, does one more 3-ping with his matrix before leaving the field, and then we start Lucia's rotation. This is universal for all of these. That's how every single rotation will start. From there, we'll go through Lucia's rotation bit by bit. I'm going to stop the video for each part, lay out what you're doing. Then I'll let it run at full speed, and I'll do annotations on the video for each step. But let's just get the basics down here. So Warzone starts. We're going to bring in Watanabe, do his single ult rotation. Again, this is universal regardless of level investment, as long as you have Watanabe available, that is. So Blaze Orbs, I do a slight delay so we can let the next pack of enemies come on screen. We go into ult. 3-ping, and now Lucia comes in. The very first thing you're going to do on bring in with Lucia, no matter what, no matter which investment you are, which rotation you're doing, you're always going to tap basic upon bring in after Lucia does her bring in attack, because that's going to give you that little bit of core passive gauge. So we come in, hit basic, the stacks go away, as you can see down here. It goes back down to 0, but now we have a little bit of core passive gauge. Awesome, good to go. Now, from here, what we do is we hold ult, don't tap it, hold ult to go into the floating hyperform. From here, we're going to do a red orb into a basic attack, a yellow orb into the basic attack string to fill the core passive gauge. As you can see, that gets the core passive gauge all the way filled up. From here, we are going to hold and release basic to do the flurry. When the flurry ends, we're going to hold basic again to do the sway. And you see we do the sway attack, come out here. And then from here, we're going to tap ultimate. Do not hold it. Tap ultimate. Go into the sword waves. We spam sword waves until QTEs and ultimate are up. Do the full ultimate. Call QTEs. And then from here, this is going to be also the same as the start. As soon as we are ready to rotate Lucia out, we're going to hit the red orb, do one basic to fill up the core passive gauge a little bit before Lucia swaps out. Then we move on to the rest of the rotation for the fire team. In this case, we swap into Liv. Liv will do one core passive, and we go from there. So that's the slowdown version of it. Now I'm going to do it in real time. I'll go through each step, kind of commentate it, and I'll put annotations on screen as well. So Warzone starts. Bring in Watanabe. 3 ping, ultimate. Hold dodge attack, trigger matrix. Spam your 3 blaze orbs, ultimate. Matrix 3 ping, Lucia comes in. Basic attack, hold ult. Red orb, basic. Yellow orb, spam basic, fill core passive. Hold basic, release. Hold basic, tap ult. Hold down basic until ultimate is up. Full ultimate, call the QTEs. Red orb, basic attack, swap. Live starts. That is the 5-star rotation. Everything will expand a little bit from here. I'll go over them piece by piece, and I'm also going to go over what you do for the second rotation for the ones that get more complex, both with Watanabe and with Lucia. So from here, let's move on to the 6-star double S rotation. Okay, so we are now going to go into Lucia's rotation with her 6-star weapon, but no deadline timing resonance. So this is going to be a good bit more complex, and in this section, I'm also going to explain the entire team rotation. So we're going to talk about Watanabe's double ult rotation that you do for every rotation with him after the first one. We'll talk about bringing in Liv briefly to cover some downtime, and then we'll talk about Lucia's 2 different rotations. The first rotation is going to look very similar to the 5-star rotation. Where this changes up is after you do the first rotation, Lucia will be doing a double ult rotation for the rest of the fight. So let's just go through this piece by piece, then I'll do it real time with annotations. Watanabe opens exactly the same way. Bring in, get your blaze orbs, spam all 3, go into ult. Spin your matrix orb, and then swap to Lucia. So Lucia starts the same way. We bring in, hit basic attack to build a little bit of the core passive. Then we hold ult, and we're going to do 1 red orb into a basic. Then we're going to do the yellow orb into the basic attack string. As soon as the core passive gauge fills, we're going to hold and release basic attack to do the flurry attack. Then from here, we're going to tap ult, go into the sword wave form, spam the sword waves. Once ult comes up, we cast the full ultimate, call the QTEs. We spin 1 more red orb into a basic attack, and then Lucia swaps out. So, Lucia's done her first single ult rotation. As you can see, Watanabe is not quite back up yet, so what we do here, bring in Liv. Liv is going to do a very quick core passive, so double dodge, spam 2-3 orb pings, and then we're going to swap Liv out. So she comes in, gives her core passive, in and out, right? Watanabe comes back in. Now Watanabe is going to do his double ultimate rotation. So how this one is going to work is how it'll work for the rest of the Warzone fight. So Watanabe comes in. You should come in with 3 shells stocked for his core passive. So we immediately go into ult. From here, we're going to spam basic 3 times to get our blaze orbs. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to use all 3 blaze orbs. One of these should trigger matrix. With the 3rd blaze orb, you'll have your ultimate online, so cast ultimate. Call your QTEs. Then spin a matrix orb, then a regular 3 ping to get back into ultimate. Go into ult mode again. 3 ping, and then spam attack to get 3 blaze orbs. Spin the blaze orbs. 1 more 3 ping, 1 more blaze orb, then spam basic attack 1 or 2 times. Ultimate comes back up. 3 ping, and now we swap to Lucia. That is Watanabe's double ultimate rotation. You will do that exact same thing for the rest of the Warzone. He only does a single ult rotation once if you're doing everything correctly. Now, Lucia comes back in, and now this rotation that she is going to do where she gets 2 ultimates is the rotation for the rest of the Warzone. So, we come in, same as always, bring in basic attack to fill the core passive gauge, and then we hold ultimate. Now, this time, instead of doing red orb basic, yellow orb basics, we're just going to do 3 red orbs into a basic. That's going to fill the core passive gauge. So 3 red orbs, spend it, core passive gauge is filled. Now, what we do is instead of going into any of the flurry attacks or anything, we're going to hold ultimate for the fast ultimate animation. Make sure you hold it. If you tap it, you'll get the full ultimate, and the rotation will be kind of bricks. So hold ultimate. We get our fast ultimate. Now, out of this, we're going to immediately go into the flurry, and then we're going to release the flurry attack, hold basic again, and now we do the sway attack. So this is going to build our ultimate gauge all the way up so we can tap ultimate. If you're high invested like I am, triple S, you'll be able to just go into ultimate from here. What I do in this and what you should do is good practice is do one more red ping, so one more red orb into a basic, then tap ultimate, and then we go into the sword waves. So we do the sword waves, we call ultimate, call our QTEs. From here, we do one more red orb into a basic, and now we're going to swap back to Liv. Liv now will do one more core passive. This will give her ultimate. So we go ahead, use her ultimate real quick, spam it up. Should note, if your Liv is not leaped, if you do not have Liv at triple S and leaped, do not bother doing the ultimate. Just do a core passive and swap to Watanabe again. But if your Liv is invested and fully leaped, go ahead and do her ultimate. Her ult comes out. We swap back to Watanabe, do the double ult rotation, repeat for the rest of the war zone. So that's a lot more complex, so we're going to go through it one more time in real time, and I'll put up annotations on the side so you can see everything you're supposed to do. So here we go. Warzone starts. Bring in Watanabe, 3-ping, ultimate. Hold, and then attack. Trigger your blaze orbs. Cast ultimate. 3-ping, Lucia comes in. Basic attack, hold ultimate to go into hyper form. 1 red orb, basic, yellow orb into basic string. Hold and release for the flurry. Tap ult. Go into the sword waves. Spam sword waves. Cast full ultimate. Call your QTEs. Out of the ultimate, 1 red orb into basic. Bring Liv in. Liv does a single core passive. Watanabe comes back in. Immediately ultimates. 3 basic attacks to build blaze orbs. Spend all 3 blaze orbs. Trigger matrix. Cast ult. Out of this, matrix ping into a 3-ping into ultimate. 1 more 3-ping, then spam basic 3 times to get 3 blaze orbs. Use all 3 blaze orbs. 1 more 3-ping, 1 more basic, 1 more blaze orb. Couple basic attacks, ultimate. 1 3-ping as Watanabe leaves, call in Lucia. Basic attack with Lucia, go into hyper form. 3 red pings. Basic attack, fast ultimate. Hold down the ultimate button. Hold down basic attack and release. Hold down basic attack for the sway. Red orb, basic attack, go into the sword wave ultimate. Cast full ultimate, call the QTEs. Red orb into basic, bring in Liv, core passive. Liv ultimate. Rotation done. You're back to Watanabe. Repeat until the timer is out. So, I said it was going to be more complex. I was not kidding. Also, I just want to throw this in. My first recording of this completely corrupted in export once I was editing. So this is the second time I have recorded this entire sequence and done the voiceover. So if I sound a little haggard, that is why. But anyway, that is the 6-star with no deadline timing. So what we're going to move on to next is going to be 6-star signature weapon for Lucia with a deadline timing resonance. Okay, so now we are going to look at the rotation for Lucia with her 6-star weapon and deadline timing resonance. What the deadline timing is going to allow us to do is speed up the first single ult rotation. Now we're going to be able to just spam the red orbs as opposed to doing 1 red orb basic, 1 yellow orb, 5 basics. We're just going to do 3 red orbs into a basic, then we're going to get through the single ult rotation and go from there. So this is going to look very familiar at the start. Watanabe starts exactly the same way, just as he does in all these rotations. So single ult rotation, spin the blaze orbs, go into ultimate, yada yada. Spend a 3-ping on the way out. Lucia comes in. Basic attack, and immediately into the hyper mode. Now this time we're going to immediately do 3 red pings, 1, 2, 3, basic attack, and then we're going to go into the flurry. So hold and release basic attack for the sword flurry. Out of this we tap ultimate, go into the sword wave form, use our sword waves, cast our full ultimate, call our QTEs. Then from here, 1 red orb into a basic, and then we swap into Liv. Liv, just like the last rotation without deadline timing, does a quick core passive. And then Watanabe comes in. He's going to do his double ultimate rotation. Exactly the same as the last video. Nothing changes for Watanabe. So spam your 3 blaze orbs, do your first ultimate. Matrix ping into 3-ping. Back into ultimate form. Build 1 more shell, spend all 3 shells, spend all 3 blaze orbs. 1 more blaze orb, then basic until ult is up. Cast ult. Do a 3-ping on the way out. Lucia comes in. Now, This rotation that Lucia does for the second run is going to be a double ult rotation with one fast ult and one full ultimate. This is what you'll do for the rest of the Warzone run. So bring in basic, get into hyperform, 3 red orbs, basic, into the fast ultimate. We do not do the flurry after the 3 red orbs into a basic attack. We go immediately into the fast ultimate. So just hold down the ultimate button until you see the fast ult. Out of the fast ult animation now, we're going to hold and release basic attack for the flurry. We're going to ping 1 red orb out of this into a basic to build up enough for our ult gauge. And now we tap ult, go into the sword waves, and you know it from here. Cast the ult, bring in your QTEs, you do 1 more red orb, basic attack, Liv comes in, core passive, her ultimate will be up, cast her ultimate, rotation complete. From there, we bring Wata back in, he does his double ult, and then Lucia does her double ult. So, that is the 6-star with deadline timing resonance. I'm going to do it real time the whole way through this time, and then have the annotations off to the side so you can utilize those for practice. So, Warzone begins, bring in Watanabe, 3 ping, ultimate. Hold dodge into attack, spam your 3 blaze orbs, ultimate. 1 3 ping on the way out, Lucia comes in. Basic attack into hyper mode. 3 red pings, 1 2 3. Basic attack, hold and release for the flurry. Tap ultimate for sword wave mode. Go into the sword waves, holding basic, call your ultimate once it's available, call your QTEs. 1 red orb into a basic, swap to Liv. Liv comes in, does a single core passive, swap to Watanabe. Immediate ultimate, 1 2 3 basic to build blaze orbs, spend all 3 blaze orbs. Ultimate, matrix ping into a 3 ping, go back into ultimate form, build a 3rd blaze orb, spend all 3, build 1 more blaze orb, spend it, basic attack until ultimate lights up, cast your ultimate. 3 ping, bring in Lucia. Basic attack into hyper mode. 3 red orbs. 1 2 3 basic into the fast ultimate. Make sure to hold ultimate here, not tap. Out of this into the flurry, into a red orb into basic, and then into your tap ultimate for sword waves. Spam sword waves, ultimate comes up, cast your QTEs. Red orb into basic, Liv comes in, core passive. Liv casts ult. Ult completes. Rotation done. Bring back Watanabe. Repeat the double ultimate rotation for both him and Lucia. That is the 6-star plus deadline timing. We have 1 more Warzone rotation to go, so bear with me on this. Just 1 more, and then we're good. Next, we're going to do the 6-star weapon with deadline timing, and your Lucia is at double S3 or higher. Okay, so this is the most complex rotation in a way, but in another way, it's actually easier than some of the others because in this case, what now happens is that at double S3 or higher with a 6-star weapon and deadline timing resonance, Lucia can now do a triple ult rotation every single time she comes on the field. How we're going to do this is we're going to do a fast ultimate, a full ultimate, 1 more fast ultimate, then we swap to the other 2 characters, do their same rotations I showed you in the last rotation, which was 6-star with deadline timing, double S or lower. And Lucia will repeat the same rotation every single time. So, let's go through. Intro is going to be exactly the same. Watanabe is going to come in, do his single ult rotation. You've seen this by now. I don't think I need to, go through the song and dance for what, the 3rd, 4th time? So, Watanabe ults will spend a 3 ping before he leaves. Lucia comes in. Same as always. Come in, tap basic, get a little bit of gauge. Hold ult to go into the hyper floating mode. 3 red pings from here. And then a basic to fill the core passive gauge. Now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to immediately go into the fast ultimate. So we hold down ultimate. Out of this animation, we're going to hold down basic attack and release it for the flurry. Flurry happens. As soon as this animation is ending, hold down basic again for the sway attack. Sway attack happens. This should build us enough ult gauge to tap ult and go into the sword waves. So this is our second ultimate. Do the sword waves, cast ult as soon as you can, as soon as it lights up, tap ult, do the full ultimate. Now from here, we're going to ping 3 more red orbs again into a basic, get the core passive gauge filled, go into hyper floating mode, do one flurry into the fast ultimate. So this is our third ultimate. Then we spend a red orb. Then we do basic, and we swap out and do Live in Watanabe from there. Exactly the same as the other video. This is the only rotation you have to learn for Lucia if you have her at double S3 or higher with her 6-star and deadline timing. So one more time in real time with the annotations. We're almost there, I promise. Watanabe comes in, 3 ping, ultimate. Hold dodge into attack, 3 blaze orbs, ultimate, 1 3 ping, Lucia comes in. Basic attack, hold ult, 3 red pings, 1 2 3, basic, fast ult. Make sure you hold ult for this. Flurry attack, into sway attack, into ultimate, hold down the sword waves, cast the full ultimate, 3 red pings again, basic, go back into floating hyper mode, 1 flurry, into fast ultimate, into 1 red orb, into basic, swap, repeat from there. That's all the Warzone rotations. We finally made it. This one, I think, feels the most intuitive because you don't have to remember one rotation into a different one for the rest of the fight, which I think makes the rhythm a little bit easier. Again, if you can't afford double S3, 6-star weapon, deadline timing resonance, that's fine. That's what the other rotations are for. If you can get to this point with Lucia, you will see a very nominal damage increase because her being able to fit in 3 ultimates obviously is quite good. But that covers all the Warzone rotations, so now we need to move on to Pain Cage. The good news is that in general, Pain Cage is much more about feeling out where your kill threshold is and just truncating the rotation as much as possible. So let's go into those. Okay, so for Pain Cage, there is not one specific rotation I can give you that's going to be a one-size-fits-all. How Pain Cage works with Lucia is that you're going to have to test different openers and different usage of the fast ultimate to see what you need to get a kill threshold. For older bosses that aren't as tanky or the earlier levels of bosses like Ballard, what you'll probably be able to do is get into a fast ultimate as quick as you possibly can by spamming the red orbs. And then if the fast ultimate itself doesn't finish the job, what probably will finish the job is going to be doing the flurry attack right afterwards. So we're going to go through the 3 difficulties of Ballard and kind of show you the different ways you can approach this. So in this case, we go directly into Lucia. Obviously, there's no reason to bring Watanabe in the field for Pain Cage. Same thing as always. You always bring Lucia in, tap basic, and get into your hyper floating mode. So from here, we're going to do red orbs to get the core passive gauge filled. Immediately go into a fast ultimate. Ballard's almost dead, so I just do the flurry attack. Bam. Donezo. That's the first difficulty of Ballard. If you are lower invested, if you were only at double S, if you only have the 5-star weapon, maybe you don't have any resonances to boost damage or anything like that, you may have to go immediately into the full ultimate to get a kill in one ultimate. You might be able to do a fast ultimate into a second fast ultimate. It's really going to depend on your investment level and how tanky the boss is, so you're gonna have to experiment with Phantom Pain Cage, and I do apologize that I can't just go, hey, here's your investment, do this rotation. You're just gonna have to test, but it's pretty straightforward. Get it to ultimate as fast as you can. More time stop means better score, boss die quicker. Pretty straightforward. So this is the earliest difficulty on Ballard. Let's check the middle difficulty. Okay, so for the second difficulty on Pain Cage right now, in this case, what's going to happen is the fast ultimate plus an attack is not going to be enough to finish the fight. So what I am doing in this case, and this is going to be a very common tactic for a lot of you, is to do immediate fast ultimate. Then I'm going to do the hold and release basic for the flurry attack and the hold release basic after that for the sway attack. That should build enough ultimate gauge for a second fast ultimate, and for this difficulty, that is enough to finish the job. Just repeating the fast ultimate as many times as you can is often going to be the easiest way to finish a Pain Cage fight. So we see I go into the fast ult, Ballard is not dead, so we do the flurry, into the sway, into another fast ultimate. And there we go. toast. Pretty straightforward there. That's a bright screen to stop the recording on. Good work, me. Pretty straightforward there. This is going to be a very easy way to kind of get a feel for where your kill threshold is. So this is a good rotation right here to kind of base your testing off of and see what you do or don't need to do to get a kill for each difficulty. But this is how I got through the middle difficulty. Let's do one more and look at the highest difficulty level for Ballard and Pain Gauge. Okay, so for Hell difficulty, final difficulty on Phantom Pain Gauge. With my testing, doing multiple fast ults was just not getting the job done very efficiently. So what I ended up trying is a fast ult into the flurry attack plus the sway attack into the full ultimate. So basically doing the exact same thing I did for my double S3 plus rotation that I showed you for Warzone. I'm just doing that until the boss is dead. So in this case, what's going to happen is we go through that same song and dance, get into our hyper mode immediately, spam our red orbs to fill core passive, and go into a fast ult. From here, we're going to do the flurry attack into the sway attack. And from here, I'm going to go into full ultimate. And I'm just going to do sword waves until ult comes online, tap ult immediately, and there we go. Easy. Plenty of room for error there to get the job done. So in general, whatever you're doing for your Warzone rotation, whatever one you can get to based on your investment with Lucia, you can more or less base your Pain Gauge rotation around that, just omitting using the other two characters. Obviously, Lucia is going to be the one doing the damage. But you're going to have to do some testing. So don't be afraid to go use the outliers and see exactly what it takes to meet your kill threshold. But basing your rotation on something similar to your Warzone rotation should give you a pretty good idea of what you're trying to get to. So as you can see from these last few breakdowns, it really is about how invested your Lucia is. Her rotations change very drastically from, investment to investment. But if you understand the basic concept of getting into hyper floating mode, filling the core passive gauge so that you can either do immediate ultimates or use the flurry and sway attacks to get to your full ultimate and go from there. But you kind of get the idea of how the character works now, how you get the most out of her. Once you get a feel for transitioning in and out of each mode and how they synergize with each other, she makes a lot of sense. I'm sure as you've been watching this guide, this is like, bro, this is so overwhelming. Because that's how I felt, just watching multiple guides and testing and even doing her tutorials and stuff. But just keep practicing. Use the annotations if you need them. Stop this video wherever you want for a breakdown, all that good stuff. And again, if you're having problems, if something isn't clicking, just let me know in the comments. I'll try and clarify for you. But that covers all of the main rotation stuff. So let's kind of wrap this thing up because I'm sure it's taking way too long already. All right, so that should wrap up everything on the Lucia Pyroath guide. This character is dense. She's got a lot going on. There's a lot under the hood, and it can be overwhelming when you're starting. So if you just watch this and you feel very lost, don't worry, that's exactly how I felt starting to learn this character. She, I think, is the most complex character we've gotten maybe ever since I've started playing, at least. So this has definitely been a challenge to pick up and get going and feel like I understand how to, teach other people how to play the character. This took a lot. I've been spending a ton of hours in the lab since yesterday trying to get this up and going. So I feel pretty confident that I've laid out the rotations for the various investment levels, how to approach her pain cage fights and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that Lucia is punishing Grey Raven. She is the character that you start this game with. She is the forefront of the Grey Raven team. And the game is always better when she's back at the forefront. So I am very glad to have this character back with a meta spot leading a team. Soon to be multiple teams once we get the plasma slash stuff going. And I'll have a guide on that, like I said, as soon as the full team is available and I can do the proper breakdown on all of that good stuff for y'all. So she's going to take you some practice and dedication, but once you get a feel for how she works and how to transfer in and out of the hyper mode, how to use her ults and which ones to use when, her kit synergizes very, very well with itself. So take your time, spend some time practicing. Don't be afraid to retry Warzone multiple times. Spend some time on the outliers for Phantom Pain Cage to get a feel for what your kill thresholds are based on your investment. And yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. This should be the last guide I really have to crunch this hard to get out in a decent amount of time. By the time the next patch is rolling around, my test server account should be fully online and ready to go. I wasn't able to get my full test server stuff unlocked because I just started using the test server this patch. So next time I should be able to do a lot more research ahead of the patch instead of scrambling to cram like 12 hours of work in one day. So but hopefully this guide helps. If there's any updates, if I missed anything, if there's rotations I didn't cover, or there's any corrections I need to make, I will make a pinned comment down below with any updates like that. If there's a major overhaul I missed, similar to how Han Ying's updated Warzone rotation came along, I will make a separate video and cover that if necessary. But this should be more than enough to get you going with the characters. So as always, appreciate all the feedback and the support on the channel. It continues to grow. More and more people are checking out PGR. That makes me incredibly happy and makes this incredibly satisfying to do. If you want to do all the fun YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, etc., sure, go for it. I always appreciate it. But as always, I hope you're enjoying the new patch. Hopefully you're prepared for another S rank next week. Good Lord. And we'll do it all again, but I will be back soon with plenty more content on Shaper's Ripples, plenty more character guides, and of course the new Elemental fix guides, all that good stuff. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll help out the best I can, but for now, that's going to put a cap on this one. Y'all take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace for now.